Hello, SheSplain listeners. We just wanted to let everyone know that SheSplain is going to be at the Women's March, January 21st in Los Angeles. We plan on posting a lot of photos and videos for you from our experience, but we also want to see your experience as well. So find us on social media at SheSplain Podcast and tag us or tweet at us, and we'll repost your story. It's a good way for us to stay connected and to maybe share some voices that aren't ours. With that said, our episode today is Witch Hunts Then and Now. This is part 1 of 2. We hope you enjoy.
We should start every episode.
Here we go.
Deep breath and breathing. Okay, so I haven't actually had any experiences with the ghosts in my apartment recently. And I definitely thought that I would around November 1st and November 2nd. Mm-hmm. Like, I thought that something, and I was kind of hoping for it, that something...
Because of the holiday?
Yeah, because of the holiday. I thought that something was going to come through because the veil is lifted between the living and the dead, and I was kind of waiting for it, and it didn't happen. So, yeah, that was a big disappointment that I didn't see a ghost.
What sorts of things have happened in the past?
In the past? Okay, well, one time when I was in bed, I was sleeping, and I woke up, and my eyes weren't totally open, but I could hear someone say, "Shush, she's starting to wake up," which I put that to just sleep paralysis, because I have sleep paralysis.
Didn't you say that you felt them touch your hair, too?
Yeah, they've definitely touched my hair, but the creepiest one was, I was laying in bed, and Matthew was in bed next to me, and so was Scudder, and I was kind of laying on my stomach away from Matthew, and I felt him poking me really hard, and I had just fallen asleep, and I was really pissed, and so I grabbed his hand, and I, whipped around so I could yell at him, and he was dead asleep, and facing the opposite direction of me, and I had let go of his hand in the meantime, because I was turning around, so I couldn't hold it. And so there was no way that he was holding my hand. I was holding something else.
Maybe Scuddy has a secret human hand.
Ew. Ew, gross. Just thinking of a weird dog, like a dog with a human hand. And it only comes out at night. It only comes out at night to, piss me off. It's the worst. To wake me up right as I'm falling asleep.
He's like, "You're not giving me attention."
It's like, hey.
Human hand.
Oh, time for the human hand.
Human hand. My dog, though, that would happen.
Yeah, he could.
That'd be weird.
He could.
That'd be weird. Are we getting into it?
Let's get down to lady business.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
This episode's theme, both.
Topic, theme, and both. Is witch hunts. And I wanted to read the Google definition of what witch hunt is, which is a search for people labeled, quote, witches, or evidence of witchcraft, often involving moral panic or mass hysteria. So, just think about that for a minute. That lines up with my research. Mm-hmm. So, I'll be starting. Oh, and just so everyone knows, you are going to hear a manly voice. Occasionally, when we ask. He cannot speak unless he's spoken to. And that is our designated dude for the day, Jake.
Hi, everybody.
That's it? We were giving you a platform, and that's what you went with? Hi, everybody. The moment's over. You can no longer speak.
Okay, go back to silence.
Back to silence. But, with that being said, if you do ever want to come in with questions while we're talking.
Use physical cues.
Yeah.
Cool. I can do that.
Yes, guys.
Wait, does that mean not it?
No.
So you don't want to speak?
No, What's the right answer?
That's the answer. There is no right answer.
Great.
Ask us.
Great.
Okay. So, would you like to begin?
Yeah, let's start. So, I decided to do my piece of the podcast on Malleus Maleficarum. That translates to the Hammer of the Witches. Mm-hmm. It was published in 1487, and it was written by Jacob Springer and Heinrich Kramer. And it's been said to be a handbook for the witch hunts in the 1500s to the 1800s. It stopped pretty close to the 1800s. And their whole thing was that basically, let me sum it up for you. There was two guys who sort of went around, they were inquisitors, both of them were inquisitors, and they sought after witches. Their whole thing was that they wanted witch hunts, they wanted witches to be a crime, and they wanted all witches to be persecuted.
So what did they think witches were doing that was so terrible?
Just living. Just existing. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is, well, there were a couple reasons about why this was happening. In the 1500s, in Europe, which this was written in Germany, both of these people were German, you have the war of religions in Europe. And so basically one religion was like, we're the best religion, and the other one was like, we're the best religion. And they had to fight each other, ultimately to the death. A lot of people died.
So much fun.
Yeah, it was so much fun. It was awful.
Everybody loves a good religious war.
Yeah, all the wars have been really fun. Okay, so Hammer of the Witches, it describes witchcraft or sorcery, which there's a difference.
What's the difference?
Basically men and women.
Okay. So which is more threatening then?
Witchcraft.
Of course.
Because of ladies. It describes it as a crime, which was pretty common for the time. In the 1400s, witchcraft actually became a crime. And so this was released a little bit prior to that. And it acted as a handbook for destroying witches, basically, and kind of eradicating all of the witches in the land. And it gave detailed procedures for governing bodies on how those trials with the witches should basically fold out. You know, it's, yes. Jake, question?
Is this where we get things like dunking them in a lake, and if they drown, they weren't a witch, and if they float, they were a witch?
No.
Like
and if they drown, they're dead.
Yeah, if they're drowned, they're dead.
Yeah.
No.
So basically you're...
That can't be confirmed with this specific piece of literature. There's actually not a lot of torture that can be confirmed with this specific piece of literature. We know that it happened, and we know that it was used as a device for people to admit that they were witches. Like, that was the whole point of torture. But in Europe at the time, you had to admit that you were a witch before you could be prosecuted.
So they basically just tortured a confession out of people.
Yes, they did. They tortured a confession. We'll get to the torture that they use later, which is not as sounds awful. It's not as exciting as I thought it would be, because this is the handbook. Like, this is what all of the Germans seeking witches used at the time, and it actually spread globally too. And like, this is what they used. This was, you know, what they looked at and what they based all of their trials on. So I was a little disappointed in the creativity with the torture, but, you know, I guess it worked.
Well,
can you actually read the text itself?
Yeah. The text was first translated in English in 1928.
Oh, wow.
So get the dates there.
I'm dyslexic, so this is like, I'm surprising myself. 1928. I forget the man who translated, but that was the first translation in English, and so it's not fun.
After the Salem witch trials.
Oh yeah.
So they weren't using that, or
they were, in the sense that this was used pretty much in all witchcraft trials and all witch hunts. This is kind of, it's spread throughout the land. Like, this is what you do. This is a witch. But as far as, like you were saying, throw her in the river if she floats, like, that wasn't necessarily specific to this piece of literature. But it is responsible for creating witchcraft and witch hunts as a crime. It was a crime, not witch hunts. Witchcraft was a crime. And also what I thought interesting is that in this book, they use kind of gaslighting to convince people that they were witches.
So, can you tell us what, or I'll say what gaslighting is.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you know where it comes from, the term?
No, actually, I don't think I do.
So the term comes from a movie. I don't actually know off the top of my head, but it's a movie, and so the whole thing is, like, I don't know if they're a couple, but there's a man who is constantly changing the levels of light coming out of the lamp or lantern and basically convincing her that she's crazy because he's like, that's not happening. Like, it's always the same. Is convincing someone that what they're experiencing is not real and that other people can't see that, what you're experiencing.
Yeah, that's what they did. Dicks.
That's a pretty advanced tactic for the time.
Yeah, well, it wasn't exactly that. It was a lot of, you're a witch, we saw you do this. Your community saw you do this. You don't know that you did this because you were under a demon spell. But
this is something that we talk about all the time, is how, as a woman, when people are telling you something, you start to kind of lose your confidence when they're saying something with a lot of confidence about you, and you start to think like, oh, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they did for a lot of their confessions that weren't necessarily working with torture, because you were only allowed at the time to try torture twice on somebody before. Just twice.
Like, how long can these sessions be?
There was no time limit on the sessions. I think that for a few of them, like if you were depriving someone of sleep, it could only last 40 hours, and that was a session.
My God.
Which is a long time.
I would confess to anything if I didn't get sleep for 40 hours.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Like, literally anything.
Exactly. So
I'm like, yeah, I murdered someone.
Yep, did it. I'm a witch. I would have died immediately in this whole thing. Like, immediately. I know that. They would try torture, and then they would move on to, but we saw you, Goody Proctor, which isn't relevant to this time period. I know that. But yes, we saw you, this person saw you, and after being tortured, 2 sessions of torture, and somebody you know is telling you that you're a witch, you're just like, fuck, I'm a witch.
Mm-hmm.
It also feels like an easy out, too, to just be like, I could just say I'm a witch, and they've already said that I was controlled by a demon or whatever, so maybe I was. Having that little bit of, like...
You doubt yourself. You doubt that you're not a witch.
Mm-hmm. Jake, you didn't get permission to speak that.
Apologies.
Sorry, you did not raise your hand. So, just so you know for next time.
Yeah, this time it's a pass.
So, like I said before, it was written in 1487, and that was also a reason why the book was so popular, because it was very popular. Between 1487 and 1574, it had 36 editions published, which is a big number. And it was second only to the Bible for 200 years.
Whoa.
So it was a pretty popular book. There were 2 things. Well, there were 3 things. There was the European War of Religions, which I talked about. There was the printing press, which had just kind of sprung up in Germany at the time.
1440.
Yeah.
I just Googled that because we were talking about books, and I was like, wait, was the printing press even around then?
But it was. It had just popped up, and it was in Germany, so they were right there. You know, in the thick of it, in the book publishing world. They were there, and they got in on it.
They were like, guys, this is going to be a bestseller.
Yeah, it's going to be a bestseller.
We could self-publish, but, let's go with the printing press.
Yeah, let's just do this. But also at the time, because of the printing press, there was a lot of propaganda about witches that added to that. So you have a lot of pamphlets and flyers going through that are, see a witch, say a witch, and then you I just came up with that. It was really good, right?
I like it.
And then this book comes out that is this huge manual, so you see it on the shelf at Barnes & Noble, and you grab that.
Medieval Barnes &
Yeah,
Noble.
medieval Barnes & Noble. Which I'm assuming is just one angry German man with like 4 books and
1 million copies of the Bible.
Yeah, thousands.
And also witches.
Yeah. And he's just mad because why wouldn't you be? I would be. So this book, actually, a lot of people wanted to discredit this book because the trials in it couldn't be confirmed, and the ones that could be confirmed could only be confirmed by Heinrich doing acting as inquisitor. So Jacob, it's kind of been a theory that Jacob wasn't actually an author of this book, and because of that, in the 1500s, or late 1400s, a lot of people are coming through and saying, hey, this didn't happen. Jacob actually hated Heinrich. They weren't friends. They were not bros. They didn't hang. And Jacob, it's actually on record that he did a lot in his power to discredit Heinrich.
Really?
Yeah, which is pretty interesting to me.
So why did he put his name on the book then?
Because, well, I'll get to that in a minute. So he put his name on the book for a reason. But so the book was being discredited, and in order to kind of keep the popularity going, we had Pope Innocent VIII, which is the stupidest fucking name. What? Pope Innocent? No, I'm sorry. I just don't buy it. Pope Innocent put a papal bull on the book, which is basically a letter of authenticity, saying this is real, it happened.
No!
Yes, this is real, it happened, even though there were many people who said, no, this isn't real, it didn't happen. He came through and he said, no, it didn't. And that was because he actually really loved both Jacob and Heinrich. He thought highly of them. He referred to them as beloved sons, which is gross. And he kind of gave them the okay to do whatever they needed to do as far as witch hunts go.
So the Catholic Church at this point is like, yeah, witches are real.
Oh, yeah. They definitely, yes, witches are real, angels are real, demons are real. They're not real, Jake. Just need to tell you that demons are not real. Jake has a fear of demons. This is a hard subject for him.
Just a little one.
At the time, the Catholic Church was saying that they were real, and that was so they could go through and persecute anyone who was interested in other religions.
Yeah.
Or
also the Catholic Church loves to be like, shut up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Anyone.
They love it.
That's not all just spewing Catholic stuff.
Yeah. They do.
That's kind of their thing.
Yeah. Shut up. Shut up. That's on their door, right? When you walk in. Shut up.
They're in Latin.
At least I'm not talking about Catholicism now. I'm just talking about in the past.
In the past, traditionally speaking,
they're not really all about free speech.
No, they're not. A lot of people aren't. But I thought that was kind of interesting that there were all of these people saying, no, this isn't real, this isn't how it happened, these two were actually foes, and then the Pope comes in and says, no, it's real, and everyone buys it, which is kind of what happened. Just feels too real right now. It's November 13th. Everything's raw. Everything is raw. So a little bit about Jacob and Heinrich. Jacob was an inquisitor in Western Europe, and he was a dean of university and a professor of theology, and this is why his name was put on the book. Well, this is supposedly why Heinrich put his name on the book. He is known for establishing the Holy Rosary. So he was really popular at the time, and he was pretty well respected at the time. And when the book was released, he was only about 7 years away from dying. So he didn't have a whole lot of time to say, no, guys, he really didn't have a lot of time to discredit Heinrich, which he tried and it failed. Heinrich was an inquisitor in South Germany, a professor of theology, and he was the leading demonologist and witch hunter in medieval Germany. So I can see where these guys maybe wouldn't have been friends, you know? But I can also see where maybe they would be friends. Everyone has that friend, right? Where it's just you look at him, you're like, oh fuck, I should not be associating with you right now. This is bad. But you still do it because they're fun to party with.
But they were bros.
It's debatable if they were bros or not. A lot of people say they were. A lot of people say they weren't. The church said they were.
But they were definitely both bros with the Pope.
Yes, they were definitely both Pope bros. Down with Pope Innocent the Eighth.
There's been 8 Pope Innocents. Really?
I mean, yeah.
8 popes were like, you know what I'm going to go with?
Innocent. Yeah. I mean, I don't really know that much about... I know a lot about demonology, and I know now a lot about this book, but I don't know that much about popes and how they work. I don't. I did not grow up in a very religious family, so I don't even know how you become pope. I think you're picked, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You're picked.
The other cardinals do an election.
And the smoke.
And then they do the smoke. But it can go on for, like, days and days and days.
Yeah, that's exhausting.
And then once you become pope, you get to change your name.
I believe you have to change your name.
You have to have a new name because... Actually, there's another reason. Do you?
I think it has to do with being reborn in the Holy Spirit and letting go of previous ties. And
so that's how you get connected to God, right? Because you're like, okay, I'm innocent now. And then you're like, God's right hand, pope.
So if I change my name...
That will bring you closer to God.
Okay. Just checking. I just wanted to know if that's something that can happen, if I should do that.
But only if you call yourself Pope Innocent.
Oh, I'm gonna. Just wait for Thanksgiving. I don't know why I picked that time to start, but I will. So, if we're going with that the book is true and legit, that means that they both wrote it. And the main focus of the book was, you shall not permit a sorceress to live. And that's in the book. The sorceress is in the book.
Does that come from some, like, is that in the Bible or something? Or were they just like, okay, here's the rule?
I think it is a part of the Bible, but I think it's one of those, this could mean one thing and it probably did not mean that thing, Bible verses. This elevated witchcraft to heresy, which is a crime that was punishable by death at the time. Like, that was a big one that you just didn't do. You didn't do that. So even the secular courts would have to prosecute the same way that they would have to prosecute witch hunts and witch trials the same way they would prosecute any other trial the same. And women in this book, it's known that women were targeted during the witch hunts. It's known that it was mostly women who were nasty women, like me, a nasty woman. The reasons in the book, though, are fun. So here's one of them. Women are more susceptible to temptation because their gender is weak.
I mean, haven't you heard the story of Adam and Eve?
Yeah, they're weak. Yeah. No, it's funny that you say that. That'll come up later in the book. And because of that, because of, you shall not permit a sorceress to live, and because women are so dominant in the book, 3/4 of those who were prosecuted were women.
That actually seems low to me, but...
Well, 3/4 were women, and I'm going to say that probably half of that last fourth were men associated with those women. So it's husbands or sons or lovers of those women, and then the other half were probably suspected to be gay men. More reasons why women suck, according to Heinrich and Jacob.
Oh, dear.
Were more lustful than men, which is, I don't know if that's true. I don't think it's true. Maybe it was true in Germany at the time.
Maybe.
That sounds like fun, though. Our temperaments towards flux. So that means that our temperaments kind of go back and forth, up and down, because we're hormonal.
Like we have
periods. But it was mostly, you're one thing one minute, you're something else, you're something the next minute, which is to be believed around menstruation, that women were kind of a little unbalanced because you're hormonal and it's Germany in the 1500s, and there's not a whole lot of shit you can do for yourself. I get it.
I mean, they didn't even have, like, Midol. They probably didn't even have, like, pads.
No, they were using sheep's wool for tampons.
Ugh.
I made that up, but I read it somewhere. I didn't make it up totally. I read it when I was in elementary school, and I don't remember I'm pretty sure it was 1500s Germany that was
sounds
happening.
Legit. It sounds legit.
If not that, it was something very close to that. We are defective in our powers of soul and body.
What does that mean?
We can't control our soul and our body. So if a demon comes to me and says, "Hey girl, why don't you come do a little dance with me?" I'm gonna say, "Oh, okay, I can compromise my soul to be damned for eternity because I'm a woman."
Okay, but, like, here's my question. Is it, like, with all these things that you're saying, if we can't even control ourselves, why do you kill the witch? Like, why don't you get rid of the demon?
That's fun. We'll get to that.
Okay. Because it just seems like, you know, throwing the baby out with the... No, that doesn't make sense. That's not the right
I know what you're going for.
But it's just like a little bit extreme if it's not the woman that's at fault because she's so weak. Like, why are you killing her? Don't do that.
Well, because they just wanted to kill women.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know that.
Yeah. And our faith is quickly doubted. Oh, and we have loose tongues.
Ugh, women with loose tongues.
Ugh, what?
Jake, you have something to say?
Jake raised your hand. Jake raises his hand at loose tongues. Tell me.
I'm listening to this list that you've got, and this sounds like a lot of, like, it sounds to me very similar to, like, nice guy syndrome reactions to things.
Oh, yes, and it's funny you say that. Heinrich was actually the ultimate, like, nice white guy.
Ugh.
He hated women. He was known to hate women and wanted to do everything in his power to just be a dick to women. If there was a way for him to torture, and not in the actual physical sense of torture, but if there was a way for him to make a woman's life unbearable, he was gonna do it. And that's well known and documented, and nobody brought that up.
Was this guy married?
No.
Shocker.
No. He was not married. He was a part of the Catholic Church.
Was he like a religious official in some capacity?
Yes. I don't remember. He held a few titles, and I don't remember where he was when he died, so I don't know if it's an official title. But they both did. They both were a part of the Catholic Church. And on that, the male witches who were tortured and killed, they just wanted power. Like, there's this whole list of why women suck, and with men it's just, I just want power. Like, that's it. And the book name, which I meant to bring this up earlier, is actually interesting because it's Maleficarum versus Maleficarum. So even in the book name, you're going into it knowing, like, women suck. Like, let's just torture the witch.
What language is that, did you say?
German.
Oh, okay. Makes sense.
Yes.
Because it was Germany.
Yeah, that's... So, for those... So I have a degree in linguistics. The change there
I have a degree in
one letter is a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
Because it's not just, like, all of them that use magic. It's just women.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also the whole idea of linguistics is that the standard is always male form, so you're only going to use the female form of the word if it's specific, overwhelmingly women, as opposed to, like, if it was even, it would be the male form because that's the quote standard.
Yeah,
all-encompassing term.
Women were evil.
Well,
they were very evil. So there's a gender-specific theory of witchcraft that was brought up in this book, and it's just good versus evil. And that's everything. If there's something in the world, it's either good or evil. And it has the counterpart to that. So you have God and Satan, or the devil, and you have Mary versus Eve, because even though they're two women, Mary was the virgin. With women, you have men, and women are evil, and men are good, but also virgins.
What's the thing with virgins?
Oh, right? The Catholic Church loves their virgins. Like, they love virgins. There's not a whole lot besides that in this book, but I'm assuming that there is a lot going on there as far as virgins and
so are
being
virgins
pure.
More susceptible or less susceptible?
Less.
Because they're pure.
Because they're pure.
I see.
They're like men. And if a virgin was a witch, she just wanted power? I'm confused. They don't address that. And women obviously corrupt men's perfection. So that's another reason why we're evil. As far as this book goes, there are trials listed in the book. And like I said, the only ones that can be confirmed were the trials that were done by Kramer. And there are no trials that can be confirmed that were done by Kramer that were men. It was all women who were tortured and executed.
Cool.
And the only way that a woman could get out of being a witch was if she was a nun. Or if
because
she
nuns
tried.
are not susceptible.
No, because they're virgins.
Uh-huh. Okay.
But it was really hard in Germany to become a nun at the time. They didn't just let everyone in.
Really?
Yeah.
Were people just, like, desperate to become a nun?
Well, I think so. I think
because of witch hunts?
I'm gonna say probably. If that's your only option, like, you are a smart woman and you know what's gonna happen, I guess I'll be a nun.
Wow.
Yeah. So, there were 6 things that a woman had to do in order to become a witch. And this is kind of where the gaslighting comes in, because it would essentially be a woman on trial, and she would have a man coming to her and asking her, did you do these 6 things? And she would say no, and he would say, no, we have witness to you having sex with the devil, or whatever. And the first one is, a pact is to be entered in with the devil. And so you would be asked, did you enter in a pact with the devil? No. Well, this guy saw you having sex with the devil on night.
Is that a pact?
That's a pact. That was actually a pretty common pact. Sex is huge in witch hunts and in witchcraft.
Gee, I wonder why.
Catholics. Yeah. Because Catholics love sex, too. They love sex and virgins and, like, blood and guts and gore.
Well, it's like, I think it's because women are exercising, like, autonomy and agency when they are sexual beings. So it's like, what is scarier than that?
To a Catholic priest, nothing.
Exactly.
Nothing. Not even demons, Jake. And then 2 is sexual relations with the devil, which is more of just like a casual, like, hookup in a closet or something.
Wait, those are 2 separate items?
Well, because for men, a pact being entered with the devil was never sexual. You would never have the devil having sex with a man, because that is unheard of. That was so beyond Heinrich and Jacob that they couldn't even write it in their book. They'd never address it. It just didn't happen. But for women, at some point it has to happen. Like, it has to happen. And the 3rd is aerial flight. So that's where you get the witches on broomsticks flying around.
Do they mention broomsticks?
They don't. They do mention flying and familiars, but they don't really go into it. A woman is seen flying because there's a crow over her house, and that's her familiar. It's not necessarily, I saw you flying over your house. It was like, I saw you flying, but actually it's a crow over your house. And
which sometimes just fly.
Which sometimes they just, sometimes they just, like, fly. That's what birds do.
Basically.
That's what they do. 4 is an assembly presided over by Satan himself.
Assembly of more than one witch?
Yes. So this is a group of witches in the forest, just hanging out, flying around, and going to Bone Town.
I mean, that sounds like really fun.
I'm into it.
I don't know if I want to have sex with the devil, but
it depends on what it looks like.
Having a witch gathering in the woods.
I mean, reading this and seeing how shitty the Catholic Church was, at that point, if the devil walks up and he's, like, real cute, and he's, you know, hey,
he's gotta
girl.
be real cute.
Yeah, he has to be. Mm-hmm. And he's just like, hey, girl, what's up? And I'm like, well, you're not gonna torture me yet.
Right.
And kill me yet. So, get on this. Yeah, I would do it, for sure. And the actual practice of magic, this is my favorite. This is women stealing dicks.
I'm sorry, what?
The practice of actual magic. So that is a big one that people talk about, is that women would steal dicks. And that actually wasn't, like, they would physically walk up and snatch a dick. Was that your question?
Yep.
Jake wanted to ask one. No. They would not snatch your dick. But I like that, and I like saying it, so expect to hear it from now until forever. That was more if a man couldn't have sex with his wife, it must be because his wife's a witch.
Obviously.
And she took his dick, and she made it seem like his dick wasn't there. But really,
women
it was.
Always being blamed for men's shortcomings.
I know. Exactly.
Literally shortcomings.
Question.
Was it ever, like, not his wife?
Oh, yeah.
Right, like, you can blame that on someone else.
You can blame it on someone else, yes. If there was a harlot in town, obviously she was the first to go.
So if you're a smart wife, you're gonna just blame someone else.
Yes.
If you're smart and you're being accused of witchcraft, you're gonna blame someone else.
Yes. Yeah.
Basically.
Always. And then the sixth is the slaughter of babies. Because you're in Germany. And it's the 1500s to 1700s, 1800s. A lot of babies died. A lot of them died. And instead of saying, let's use science, because you can't use science. You can't use science to figure this out. It was witches killing the babies.
I gotta say, witches sound a lot like feminists.
I mean, yeah.
Like, do you know that, what's that quote that's like, feminists are killing babies and divorcing their husbands.
And turning into lesbians.
That's, like, they sound like the same.
It is the same. It is the same. Which is a little scary right now, especially. So back to the practice of magic. Because that's actually where, like, you were asking, why wouldn't you just kill the devil instead of killing all of these women? Well, obviously it was because they wanted to just kill women. They just didn't want women. During these trials, women weren't actually never given any power if they did make this deal with the devil. So it was all kind of an illusion to them. And it was always the devil acting on their behalf in order to do something. So if a witch snatches your dick,
like they do,
it wasn't actually a witch snatching your dick. It was that she could mesmerize you. I was going to say memorize. She could mesmerize you into thinking your dick wasn't there. And that was the only true power that witches had.
That was the only one?
It was basically they could glamour you into thinking whatever. And the real shit came from the devil. And that came from the devil because you made a pact to have the glamoring power. And glamoring is not the word that they used. I got that from True Blood. So, and it's not even witches, it's vampires. But you get it. You get it. So, women actually didn't even have any power. It was just that they allowed the devil to come in and do what he do. I guess feast on babies or kill livestock or...
Wait, so did the witches, like, in theory, did the witches kill the babies, or did they just give them to the devil to kill?
It was more just give to the devil to kill. Or the witches would say, there's a baby over there in that house, and then the devil would go in and, like, sit on the baby's chest or something. That's not true.
It's not funny, the way you said it.
Well, I mean, there's some pretty ridiculous shit that we kind of, like...
You have to
laugh at it. That's all there is to it. So that was how you were a witch. That's how you became a witch. Like I said before, if this was real going on, I wouldn't have said no. Like me, now, today, would not have said no. It sounds much better than living in Germany at that time, just under a bonnet. I'm assuming witches didn't wear bonnets, but everyone else did. Because witches
those bonnets off.
So cool. Okay, so torture.
Yay!
Not playing. There was one form that was traditionally used, and that was you would tie the witch's hands around her back, and you would use a pulley to lift her arms above her head until her feet had left the ground, and so her shoulders would dislocate. And that was the most common form of torture, but it was very effective, so you didn't really need anything. And also, at the time, there were people who didn't believe in witches. They knew better, and that was more of the secular government. And so there actually were some regulations on torturing witches to get confessions, but it was ultimately, put her up by her shoulders and drag the witch out of her. And they couldn't just ask if she was a witch. They couldn't just come out and say, hey, have you been witching lately? Because that was illegal, actually. And also because it was thought, the Catholic Church thought that being a witch was hidden in your mind, this is another thing that we go back to with gaslighting and being told something when you know that it's not true. So a lot of the questions were, did you see this? And then you would say yes or no. And it was usually yes, because it was quite an innocent question. And then the Inquisitor would expand on that. And you're being tortured, and by the end of it, you've just confessed to a story that you've never heard before, but is now actually, unfortunately, sometimes really in the mind of these people. So that was quite sad. By the end of the torturing, it's estimated that 40,000 to 60,000 people were killed, and that was between the 14th and 17th century.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah, that's quite a bit.
And that was 3/4 of that was women.
3/4 of that was women. It was encouraged by this book greatly. And this book, still pretty controversial. There are a lot of scholars who go back and read it and say, no, this happened, and they argue. But the base of what this book did for Germany and the rest of the country, the rest of Europe, and so on globally is definitely there.
Were you able to do any research into, like, new things with witches? Or
give us time, Jake. That's what we're going into.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
Jesus.
Sorry. I don't know.
Jake, come on.
I didn't ever get to see the outline. I'm sorry.
No, we didn't tell you the outline. Why would we tell you the outline?
We didn't do that.
Need to know.
So we're doing witch hunts.
Cool.
Witch hunts, and the reason why I chose this book in particular, and not just all witch hunts, early witch hunts, is because there's so much. And this was actually the foundation of the real witch hunts that happened in Europe and continue to happen after.
What I was going to say is, interesting to me is that Malleus Maleficarum is actually now used. That terminology is used by a lot of different groups.
It is used by a lot of different groups, and I was going to talk about that. Heinrich, who ended up being kind of like a shady dude, believe it or not.
Surprise.
Not on the up and up. And he either wrote the title or inspired the title. Like, I did not go that deep into this research. Called Malleus of the Jews. So that's the kind of stuff we're working with here.
Oh,
it's
wow.
Germany, like, y'all get it. These are not good people.
So he was like a really forward thinker.
Yeah. He was like, he was inspirational to some people.
I've got ideas that are centuries ahead of time.
Not a whole lot unlike our president-elect, Donald Trump.
You just said that.
Just saying it. I mean, Heinrich wasn't Hitler. He was just shitty like Hitler.
Yeah. Well, can we pause for a minute? Because I gotta pee, like, real bad.
I know, me too.
Well, that will end part 1 of our Witch Hunts Then and Now episodes. Next week, we will focus more on modern-day witch hunts and social media witch hunts. And speaking of social media, you should follow us on Twitter and Instagram at SheSplain Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and thanks for listening.